Okay, so the Gemara says like this. Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Ma'aseh b'chased echad. There was a story involving a pious man, b'chased echad, a righteous or pious man. Shenasan dinar la'ani, that he gave a currency, he gave a denomination, he gave a monetary value to an ani, to a pauper. The erev Rosh Hashanah, the day before Rosh Hashanah. B'shari b'tzaros, and it was a year of a famine, where people did not have sufficient sustenance. V'knitzo ishton. And it seems that the Pashup shot is that his wife was angered. Why? Because they were very, obviously everyone was suffering because of the famine, and especially this family, this righteous, this pious man, he himself was a pauper, he was indigent, and he suffered poverty. And the husband, instead of thinking about having provisions, having a meal for Rosh Hashanah, he's too generous. And he's too altruistic, and he gives them little money that they have, he gives it instead to the pauper. So this made his wife very upset. And basically, like all good husbands, he was evicted from his house. He was thrown out of the house. So where does he go? V'halach v'lam b'beis hakvaros. He didn't have any friends to spend the night by, so he decides he's going to spend the night in the cemetery. V'halach v'lam b'beis hakvaros. Now, who was this chassid echad? So we have a tradition, we have a Masorah. Now when the Gemara says chassid echad, it's based on other Masechtas and Shas. Now when the Gemara says that there was a chassid echad, a pious man, it's referring either to Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi or Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba. Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba was a great man. He was a legend in Klal Yisrael, a third generation Tana, a contemporary of Rabbi Kiva, the Rebbe of Rav Shimon bar Yochai. Can you imagine how illustrious? Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba actually was the one that defied the Roman government that said that anybody that gives smicha, anybody that ordains talmidim to make them into ordained rabbis, that not only will they kill the person, but any city that hosts ordination, they will bulldoze the city, they will demolish the city, they will decimate everybody, destroy the entire city. So he came up with a little ruse, and he gave it the smicha in between two cities, so that there weren't any defined parameters or boundaries, and he thought that then the city would be spared. And he was 7 years old when he risked his life to do this. Of course, his tormentors, the persecutors, the Romans, got wind of it, and they decided to kill him. They threw spears into him, and they wanted to also attack those that he gave smicha to, but he was a Mekubal, he was a Kabbalist also, and he said some kind of Kabbalistic intonation, words, and therefore they couldn't get through him. They couldn't make him budge at all. So while they did kill him, and he was a real martyr and a real hero at 70 years old, to give the smicha to 5 different talmidim, amongst them the greatest rebbes of Klal Yisrael, amongst Rav Shimon bar Yochai was one of them, of course. But that was Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba, and he was known as a great chassid. There's a lot to say about him, but we'll suffice with that. And then Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi, this usually is Stam Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah. When the Mishnah mentions Rabbi Yehuda, it's not referring to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi necessarily, it's referring to Rabbi Yehuda Eloi. Rabbi Yehuda Eloi was also considered to be a great chassid. He was the one that on Shabbos he once contemplated, he saw a hole in the fence, and he once contemplated fixing the hole, and because he even contemplated, he wasn't going to do it, but because he even contemplated it, he said he'll leave that hole forever, he'll take a loss, and as a reward for that, Tzlaf grew a special tree that ended up providing for him and his family grew. It's also brought down that he was a Gilgal of Slavchad, who was the one that was Machal Shabbos, L'Shem Shemarim. He desecrated Shabbos for the sake of heaven in the Midbar. He was a Gilgal of Slavchad to repair and to rectify the Shabbos observance. Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi, it's brought down about him that his Talmidim were also so poor that 6 Talmidim had to share one blanket, and that he and his wife, they couldn't afford a coat. So they got one coat and they would exchange. They would take turns wearing the coat, to the extent that one day he couldn't make it to the base marriage because his wife had the coat. And the Nasi heard about it. The Nasi says, we have to get you a coat. But he was a very, very great man. He's buried near Tzvas, and it's said about him that if you go to his caver, you needed a parnasa. It's a big skula to go to his caver. I think that they also buried in his caver, they buried cremated ashes of Nazi victims, of holy Jews. There's a famous story about that. But many legends, not Chashon legends, many stories about Rabbi Bar Eloi. He was a very holy fourth generation Tana. His father also, Rabbi Eloi, was a Tana. And therefore, when it says Chassid Echad, when it says it was a pious man, it's always referring to either Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eloi or Rabbi Yehuda Bar Baba. We're not sure in this story who precisely it is, but he angered his wife because they didn't have any money to put on the table for food, and he gave the only money that he had for tzedakah, and therefore his wife got infuriated. She got really incensed and enraged, and she threw, he felt like he couldn't go back home, so he spent the night in the cemetery. And what happens in the cemetery? The Gemara says, it's a famous Gemara, one of the most famous Gemaras of all Shas. The Gemara continues. Now it says, now we're on the seventh wide line. It says, "V'shama shtei ruchos." He heard two spirits. Shemasapr zulazu. Rashi says, "Shel shtei yelados mesos." These who have two young girls that perished, that died. These were their spirits. Amra chadol chaverta. One young girl's spirit said to the other, "Chaverti boi v'nosha bolam." Chaverti, my friend, boi, let us go. V'nosha, let us fly. Olam, in the world, let's return to the world and fly. V'nishma mechura pirgud, and we could actually go now. She says that they'll go to the highest realms, and we'll listen. Mechura pirgud, behind the curtain. This is the curtain that of the very mechitza mavdelis. Rashi says mechitza. There's Rashi on the first narrow line. Mechitza mavdelis, the partition that separates Makom Hashchina between the Shemayim and the Mokum Shechina, the place of the Shechina itself, and we'll listen in what the Shechina, what it says. That we want to know what's going to happen. Ma pranis b'olam. This year, this coming year, after Rosh Hashanah, which punishments are coming to the world? Let's hear what's going on. Amra la chaverta, her friend said, Eini chola, I can't fly with you. Shani kvura machatzel shalkanim, because I am buried. I don't have regular tachrichim, I don't have regular shrouds. Rather, I'm buried machatzel shalkanim with a cover of twigs, of reeds. Ela lechiat, you should go alone. Very nice. It's very generous of her. She's sending her friend to the unknown, to a frightening place. You go. Umashat shamas. And what you hear, Amri li, you should report to me. Report to me what goes on. Machuri apurgud, in this very celestial place. So the question is, why couldn't she then report? Why couldn't she accompany her friend? Because she didn't have the traditional shrouds. Because she had the reeds, right? Why couldn't she accompany her friend? So the answer is that because her body could not deteriorate since she wasn't buried in the regular shroud, she was buried with reeds. And in order for the spirit, the ruach and the neshama to be liberated from the guf and to be able to traverse the higher worlds, so the person has to have deterioration, decomposition. That's why it's brought down that it's better that a person have the deterioration, decomposition right away and not be buried in a way that would impede that would circumvent that. That's why we bury in a very specific manner, so that the person should have the deterioration, decomposition, disintegration as soon as possible, so that the ruach is liberated, and that's very interesting. But there's a question that's posed here by many commentaries, and that is that why, if he was a chassid, why is he going to a cemetery? The Gemara Chagiga Daf Yud Gimel tells us that a cemetery is a place for shotim, for fools, for deranged people. That people that are not 100% normal, they go and they sleep in the cemeteries. Somebody that has senility or deranged, something that he's not well mentally, doesn't have mental faculties. He's a shota. He goes into the cemetery. Also, we know that the cemetery is a place of contamination. It's a place of impurity. So why would he go into the cemetery? Lon Bebesa Forest, he'd spend the night in the cemetery. He could have gone on Ocean Parkway to park bench. He could have gone in Prospect Park and slept over there, right? Or he could have knocked on one of his friend's doors. Maybe he was embarrassed. His friend would say, "Don't you have your own house?" And he'd say, "Well, my wife threw me out of the house for the night." Okay, so there's other places to go. Why is he going to the cemetery? So the Ritva says that the reason why he went to the cemetery is because he didn't go to the cemetery. The Ritva says this was all a dream. That the chassid would not have gone to the cemetery. This was something that he was privy to through a dream. And when it says he went to the cemetery, it doesn't mean he actually frequented, he didn't actually visit the cemetery, he saw it in a dream. The Maharsha actually concurs with this approach of the Ritva. The Maharsha also says that he would not have gone to the cemetery. This was a dream. The Kisei Rachmim, Another commentary says that it doesn't mean he went into the cemetery proper, but he went near the cemetery, but it was close enough proximity to be able to hear what was transpiring from the spirits of these two young girls that died in the cemetery. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter says something very fascinating. He says that the man was, because he was on such a holy level, he was a chassid, he was disappointed with his character traits. He was disappointed with the way that he reacted, and that he became angered because of his wife becoming incensed and angry, and it affected his composition, his composure, and his mental constitution, and it made him compromised in his, he lost his temper. Now, it's something, kas is something we're all prone to. We should all avoid it. The Gemara tells us that kas is a terrible thing, and the Zohar says, kol hakois kilu over the Zohar, it's akin to idol worship. The Gemara says that kas kol minei gehenim shol. It's a Gemara Nadarim, kol minei gehenim sholtim. But anybody that gets, incensed or enraged or infuriated, irate, then it's like Gehenim takes over him. So it's something we should all, if you need help with it, I'm not going to help you. I'm going to send you to a good therapist. No, if you need help, of course, I'm always here to help you with anything, but you have to engage in behavior modification therapy. It's very, very important, because anger, you become engulfed by anger and become really transfixed by it. Takes over your whole persona, and it's not a healthy thing. You develop a type A personality, you're more prone to heart attacks and strokes and everything else, and it's not a religious way to live. Religious way, if you have faith, you don't get angry. But anyhow, so he got angry, so Bishol Santa says that he did something drastic. He did something he would never do, because really his Keneged, it's not appropriate. So Keneged Yad was Keneged Judaism to spend the night in the cemetery. But he felt it needed to be sober. He needed to be reminded of the severity and seriousness, and to be solemn, to become very, very solemn. How do you become solemn? By becoming morbid, by thinking about the morbid things, and by going to cemetery. What could be more fundamental, to shaking a person up and getting a person really more in touch than going to a cemetery, seeing all the tombstones, seeing the fact that all these people were once alive, now they're dead, that, shuv yom echad mifnei misescha, as the Mishnah also says, return every single day. You should treat it like it's your last, because it may be your last. And it's a very empowering way to live. It's not a morbid way to live, very empowering way to live that. Every day may be your last. If you think that every day may be your last, you'll be a much more beautiful person. You'll be a much more presentable person. You'll be a much more gracious person and a benevolent person. You won't lose your temper, because it may be your last day, and you don't want to be reminded. You don't want to be remembered on your last day as being an obnoxious, irate fool. So therefore, it's a good thing to live every day. Every day a person says, this day may be my last. So anyhow, so that's a shot that Rabbi Yisrael Salanter says. Okay. Now, the fact is that we know that there are different restrictions that the Gemara does bring down about when a person is in the cemetery, and it's based on a Gemara over here on Daf Yud Ches. The Gemara says that it's on Daf Yud Ches. If you just go to Daf Yud Ches, turn a page before. This is the beginning of yesterday's Daf, or the middle of yesterday's Daf. Amr Chamer Abba Yehuda, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, around 10 lines from the bottom of Yud Ches and Aleph. Amr to call Roya, a mace, that if you see a mace being escorted and ve'inam alaveu, and you don't escort the mace, it's a big mitzvah. Even suspend Torah learning. If you see a mace, to participate in the funeral, it's very, very important to give respect. Over Mishum Loig L'Rosh Charif Oseu. Then you over be causing derision or mocking or ridiculing the poor person. Poor person means somebody who's bereft of mitzvahs, referring to a dead person, a corpse who can't do any mitzvahs. Charif Oseu, you're making him fool of him, making mockery of him. Milhoveu Mascharo. If you do escort a dead person, it's a very big inyan. We know at BGX we've had opportunities throughout the years, Baruch Hashem, to participate in mace mitzvahs and people that became religious at the very, very end of their lives, or didn't become so religious, but did a few mitzvahs, and we were able to make sure that they had, remember your friend, of course, and make sure that they had a kosher funeral, a kosher burial, and tahara, which is a huge, huge mitzvah. Baruch Hashem, the BJX family was able to participate in this many times. It's huge. So it says matzcharo amalav kasev. So it brings down these psukim that the Rebbeinu Shalom chabda, the Rebbeinu Shalom, treats you in a very, very high, accords you a great, great respect. So it's a big, big inyan. We know there are halachas, so as far as the Gemara does speak about it, as far as there's certain proscriptions, certain restrictions about if you're in the presence of a mace, that because the mace is bereft of mitzvahs, so therefore there's certain types of behavior that we're not allowed to do. We're not allowed to learn Torah, we're not allowed to make brachas in the presence of a mace, within the daled amos of a mace. unless there's a partition there. You have to be careful, and that's why we don't make sure our tzitzis are tucked in. There's a lot of different mitzvahs that we don't do in the presence of mace, so that the mace shouldn't feel bad. Okay, let's go now. Let's go to the Gemara Tez Zayin Amabez. We're trying to do an overview as many dafim as possible for the past week. So Tez Zayin Amabez, which is page 32, 16b. It brings down the different prayers that different great rabbis said when they finished their Shmona Esrei. Right? We know that there are 18 brachas in the Shmona Esrei. It's called Amidah. Shmona Esrei means 18. There was another bracha that was an addendum that was added, amended later on, V'lam al-Shinim, because there were detractors, because there were scoffers and skeptics and heretics that were malshin, that they maybe did entrapment against Jewish people, and they snitched on Jewish people, and therefore we need a special bracha to protect ourselves against them. But when the Shemona Esrei technically concludes after Mavarach Esmo Yisrael B'Shalom, all the greatest things in Jewish liturgy and Jewish practice always end with Shalom. Right, whether it's the benching, the grace after meals, whether it's the Shemona Esrei, whether it's the Mishnah, even Shas ends with Shalom, because the critical and pivotal thing in Judaism is Shalom, is to maintain Shalom. That's what makes Hashem happy, when the Jewish people have Shalom, when we are ambassadors and emissaries, and when we personify Shalom. So that's why everything is Shalom. So the end of Shemona Esrei, the culmination of Shemona Esrei is Shalom, but then there's an epilogue, a postscript. And that is different types of incorporated tefillos that the Gemara wants to now suggest. And the Gemara brings down quite a few of them. And it ends up being that the one that we do is going to be mentioned on Yud Zayin, which we'll get there. But one of the suggestions actually is, if you look on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines to the bottom, around 6 words from the end of the line, Rav, Basar Tzeluse, Rav, the great Rav. Basar Tzeluse, Basar means after, Tzeluse means after his prayer. Tzali, Tzeluse means the word tzali, pray. As a matter of fact, when Syrians or Middle Eastern Jews, they don't say daven, they say tzali. Did you tzali yet? So if you stopped on the street on the Avenue S neighborhood, or Ocean Park neighborhood, and they say, did you tzali yet? You say, what? Now you know what I mean. Tzali. Tzali means to pray. Right? So from the word tzeluse, pray. Omar Hachi. So Rav, after his prayer, after his Shemona Esrei, what would he say? He would say this prayer. Yehi ratzon fenecha Hashem Elokeinu, yehi ratzon may it be thy will, Hashem our God, shetitan lanu, that you should give us chaim aruchim, long life, longevity, chaim sheshalom, life of peace, chaim shel tova, life of goodness, chaim shel bracha, life of blessing, chaim shel parnasa, life of sustenance, chaim shel chiyut tzatzamos, a life where our bones are strengthened, right? This is good for osteopathic doctors, right? You see that they understood that your bones have to be lubricated, that your bones have to have adjustments sometimes, that your bones have to be in sync, that they have to be in line. Chiyut tzatzamos, chaim sheish b'hem yiras chet, a life where we have fear of sin, chaim she'en b'hem shbush chlimah, we should have no degradation, we should have no humiliation, chaim shel osher chavod, a life of wealth and honor, chaim shetei banu avas Torah of Yerushalayim, a life in which we have a love of Torah and fear of heaven, chaim sh'tamali lanu es kol mashal samenu tova, a life in which all our fervent wishes are fulfilled, l'tova, for good. Okay, so now you see from here that this is Rav's prayer. When do we say this prayer? Interestingly enough, we do not exactly say it. We don't say it after Shemona Esrei. And all these prayers that are given are suggested. Look at the next one, Rebbe. Okay, look at Rebbe. Rebbe Basar Tzeluse. What did Rebbe Yehuda Nasi? How did he finish his culminate? What was the culmination of his Shemona Esrei? What was the epilogue of his Shemona Esrei? It was Amar Hachi Yiratzon Fenecha Hashem Elokeinu. We're now in the third to last line of Yud Tez Zayin Amabez. Yiratzon Fenecha Hashem Elokeinu V'Zgenu Tatzlenu. Please Hashem, save me Me'azei Panim, from brazen-faced people. Me'azes Panim, from brazen people, from people that don't have regard. A lot of people like that are just really obnoxious, and that are chutzpahdik, that have audacity. From an evil person, pegara, and from an evil mishap, some kind of incident, chas v'shalom, that can happen, where a person, could be hit by a car, or a person could be ran over by a bus. Anything can happen, chas v'shalom. Yitzhak, save me from my evil inclination. From mechavara, save me from a bad colleague, from a bad friend. Right? They say that friends could ruin your lives. They could enhance your lives, or they could put you in the wrong. You could be in the wrong place at the wrong time because your friend brought you to that wrong place at the wrong time, right? Mishachara, save me from a bad neighbor. Bad neighbors could ruin your life. They could fight over your driveway for the rest of your whole life, right? Or they could go ahead and they could, play music at all hours of the night. Right? Bad neighbors can be bad. Satan Amashlis from the Satan Amashlis from the devil. Chas not the devil. We don't believe in the devil. We believe in the Satan Yitzhahara that could destroy us. Midin Kasha from a harsh judgment. Baldin Kasha from a person Baldin Kosher, Bein Shu, Bein Bris, Bein Shu, whether he's Jew or Gentile. Now, when do we say this? We say this every single morning after the Birchas HaShachar. We say this. So we don't say it after Shemona Esrei. So now you see that all our liturgy is based on a Gemara. And Tezayim and Beis and Yudzayim and Aleph, all the special Yiratzos that we say, the Yiratzos that we say before learning Torah, after learning Torah, it's not created in a vacuum. It's not something that was innovated, centuries ago. This is talking about millennia ago by the greatest Chazal, by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, by Rav. And then, of course, we go to now the Rosh Chodesh one that we say Yiratzon. It's interesting because many people conclude B'schus Tfilas Rabim. Now, if you remember, in the Schus Tefillah of the multitudes, we should be answered. That's the Yiratzon liturgy that we say on Rosh Chodesh, which is a big problem because it's a misnomer and there could be a printer's error. It should say B'schus Tfilas Rav because it was Rav was the pioneer of that tefillah. And instead, I think a printer made an error and a corruption, and he said he didn't realize that Rav was the author, and he thought, B'schus Tfilas Rav, and for the sake of it's nice that you have multitudes saying a prayer, and therefore it should be to your benefit. But it's not B'schus Tfilas Rav, and B'schus Tfilas Rav. Rav was the one that said that prayer. Okay, so that's a very important note to remember. And then if you go to on Yud Zayin and Aleph, finally, we paskin, this is what we do, around 10 lines from the top, the first wide line, the third word off of the first wide line, Rava. Rava Barsa Saluse, how would Rava conclude his Shemona Esrei, his davening? Amar Hachi, he would say this, Elokaya, God, Achalon Atzarti Eni Chadai. Actually, I'm sorry. I just want to point out that this is what Rava said was actually how we conclude our Yom Naram, Yom Kippur, the Shemona Esrei. But the way that we conclude every single day is a little further, is on the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth wide line, and around the sixth word off of the fifth wide line, Mar Berei Ravina. Mar Berei Ravina, Kiyav Messiah L'Sluse. How would he conclude Shemona Esrei Amahachi? He would say, Elokai Nitzor L'Shonei Mera Elokai. My God, Nitzor, preserve, protect L'Shonei Mera, my tongue from bad, not to speak Lashon Hara. Isn't that beautiful? That's how we conclude our Shemona Esrei. Svasai, my lips, Midaber Mimra, from speaking deceit. Umkalai Nafshi, Umkalai, and those that curse me, those that try to offend me, Nafshi Sidom, I shall remain silent. Hanel Lovin, that those that are offended, those that are insulted, those that are degraded, right? Ve'enim mashivim, and they don't respond in kind. They don't do vengeance. They don't retribution. They don't answer. Shomrim charpasim, they listen to their degradation. Ve'enim mashivim, they don't listen. So Hashem gives them the biggest brachas. Now, it was not the Christian mentality of turn the other cheek, of physical assault we're talking about, but that it's not going to help any matter by answering. So sometimes, the biggest repudiation is just silence, and not to, let the thing fester and not to let the thing get more aggravated. And then he says, V'nafshi ke'afar l'kol siya, and my soul ke'afar should be like dust la koltia to everybody. That doesn't mean that I should allow myself to be trampled on. There's no mitzvah in Judaism to be abused. And there are certain Rishon Achronim that do say that if a person is abused, they have every right then to respond in kind and to retaliate in kind. A person should not suffer abuse. But what does it mean? Nafshi le'efar kol siya, what does it mean then that my soul should be like dust to everybody? So Tosfos, the first Tosfos on the daf says, a fascinating Tosfos, ma offer is the first Tosfos there. Nafshi, the deeper muscle. The opening statement is v'nafshi k'afar kol siya, my soul should be like dust to everybody. Ma offer eino mekabel kliya, just like dust does not receive damage or destruction. You can't, you could trample the dust, but it doesn't suffer any type of destruction. La'olam, forever. Kain yi ratzon, so Yehi ratzon, may it be thy will, Hashem, Cesari lo yichel olam, that my progeny, my descendants, should not ever be destroyed. And that's what it means, the blessing to Avram, that your progeny, your seed, should be kafar, it should be like the dust of the land. Not that Hashem, they should be abused or trampled upon or destroyed, but that the same way dust is earth, is not destroyed, so too your progeny, that should be the bracha, that should not be destroyed. Okay, now let's go. So much to do, and I have to really pick and choose. It's very, very hard because it's all a treasure trove. It's such a repository of sheer genius and just uplifting, elevating Musar and beautiful, beautiful homiletics.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand why they added the bracha of Lamini to the Shemona Esrei.
Because there were people that unfortunately made trouble, Jews that made trouble. and therefore we daven that for lamalshinim al tisik, for those that rat on other Jews, those that snitch on other Jews, those that lamalshinim that speak derogatory about other Jews, al tisik, they should not have any hope. They should be weeded out. Yeah. Okay, let's go now to Daf Yudalad. Okay, so now Daf Yudalad is speaking about something that's very important in regards to the Nusach HaTfilah, in regards to Halachas HaTfilah, is that if you're Mil Shmona, let's say if you're Mil Shema, and somebody comes to you and somebody says, I have to speak to you about something very important, or wants to greet you, and depending on their status or socioeconomic status, or if they're aristocratic, are you allowed to answer? You're not allowed to answer. Do you have fear if you don't answer? Right, many different laws. But then the Gemara says, so the Gemara, that's based on the Mishnah, of course, and the Mishnah appears, if you want to look it up, it's on the Mishnah of Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, about Sholem Pnei Hayira Meshiv, or Sholem Pnei HaKavod Meshiv, in the middle of Shema. So then the Gemara here at Daf Yud says that Tana Debei Reb Chia V'Halel. What is the din about Halal? If you're in the middle of saying Halal, are you allowed to interrupt Halal? If somebody greets you or somebody needs your, are you allowed to interrupt? So the Gemara says that Mahu Shi'afsik, are you allowed to interrupt? And this is around 8 lines from the top of Daf Yudal Amud Aleph. Mahu Shi'afsik, are you allowed to interrupt? Amrinon, Kavachomer, Kriya Shema Doraisa. So we say that there's a Kavachomer, that Kriya Shema, which is a biblical mitzvah, poseg, then you're allowed to interrupt. Halal D'Rabbanan, Halal, which is only D'Rabbanan. Mibari, it's a question? Or Dilma, or maybe, right? So of course, the Kavachomer, what's the question? If Kriya Shema, you're allowed to interrupt, and Kriya Shema is a D'Oraisa, how much more so than Halal, which is only D'Rabbanan? The Gemara is assuming that Halal is only D'Rabbanan. So the Gemara says, oh, Dilma, no, maybe, not necessarily, Persuminisa Adif, but Halal is Persuminisa, by praising Hashem and singing in jubilation to Hashem, then it's disseminating the miracles that Hashem wrought for us, and the salvation that Hashem, that caused for us, then maybe that is even greater than a D'Oraisa. And therefore, you will not be allowed to interrupt. So, Amalei Posek, he says you're allowed to. Now, it's interesting because he says you're allowed to interrupt by Halal as well. And then he says, Amarabba, Yamim Shayach Gomer Ben Azhalal, Ben Perak Leperak Posek. Then he goes into halachas, the minutiae, the technicalities of halachas. He says the days that, even that a Yachid, if it says the complete Halal. Now, it happens to be that in Klal Yisrael, in Eretz Yisrael, they say Halal 18 days a year. Does the Yom Tovim, the days of Pesach and Sukkot, the Shalosh Regalim, of course, and they say when we say a full Halal is 18 days a year, and of course also including Hanukkah. So, but here in Chutz La'aretz we say 21 because we have Yom Tov Sheni, so we say 21. Now, it's interesting that there is machlokas whether halal is the rice of Rabbanan. There's a big machlokas amongst Rishonim whether halal is the rice of Rabbanan. The Shakazari Paskin said it's a Rabbanan, and therefore he says if you're not sure, if you said halal on a given day that you're obligated to say halal, he says you don't have to repeat it, you don't have to say halal, because halal is only the Rabbanan. The Chasam Sofer seems to say that halal may be a Doraisa. Thank you so much, Chesed. But the question is, and this is a famous, you look at the Tosfos over here in Daf Yudalad, there's a classical Tosfos in Shas, and it's actually pretty lengthy Tosfos. You see it takes up almost the length and breadth of the whole page, but this is a famous Tosfos because he brings down the Shita Rabbeinu Tam, and there's a monumental and world-class machlokas between Rabbeinu Tam and the Rambam in regards to Halal on Rosh Chodesh. What is the source of us saying Halal Rosh Chodesh? Rosh Chodesh is not a yontif per se that we experienced salvation. All right, on a typical yontif, the reason why we say Halal is because we're gratitude to God that He rescued us and He liberated us from tyranny, from oppression, from persecution, from genocide. On Purim, we would say Halal, but Kriyusa Zuhalusa, the Gemara says that the Mikra Megillah, the reading of the Megillah, recounting the story of the Megillah, is the substitute for Halal, is even a higher dimension than Halal. But otherwise, you would say Hanukkah, of course, we say Halal, and Pesach, and so we say Halal because we're thanking Hashem. So what's the Makor? What's the basis? What's the source of saying Halal in Rosh Chodesh? Rosh Chodesh is a new month, right? The lunar calendar. It represents a cycle of the waxing and waning of the moon. The fact, that there was a special carbon brought, represents kapara for the Jewish people, atonement for the Jewish people, represents the fact that there's a new chance every month to grow as a Jew and to achieve forgiveness and atonement. And it's a beautiful concept. What does that have to do with Hallel? So actually the Gaonim say, it's very interesting, Tommy Hagen brings down from the Gaonim, that the reason why we say Hallel on Rosh Chodesh is because the Kapitel Tehillim, the chapter Tehillim, says Hallelu Kel B'Kachal, Hallelu B'Girazo, Hallelu B'Grosov. There's 12 utterances, there's 12 times that Hallelu is mentioned, and each of those Hallelus is symbolic of one of the months of the year on the lunar calendar, and therefore that's why we say Hallel as a reminder, really as a symbol of the Hallelujahs, which is a little of a dochek because there's one month in the calendar that we don't say Hallel. Anybody know what month that is? Rosh Hashanah we don't say Hallel. What?
Tishrei.
Tishrei, exactly. Rosh Hashanah, perfect. So it could be that, again, that you don't have to say Hallel because the davening is a substitute, is a replacement, is a mala makom for the Hallel, and therefore it's not a dochek, it wouldn't be problematic. But that's the Gaonim's approach. The Kaf Teferach points out that in Eretz Yisrael they did not need the reminder of Hallel being, that there are those who have the approach that Hallel reminds us of the importance of and the prominence behind Rosh Chodesh. When he said in Eretz Yisrael they didn't need that, they only said Hallel, it seems, in Bavel, which is very surprising. Only in Babylonia did they say Hallel and Rosh Chodesh, but in Eretz Yisrael they did not say Hallel and Rosh Chodesh. Others say that the reason why we say Hallel on Rosh Chodesh, other Rishonim say, is because it is a reminder of the Kiddush HaChodesh, the sanctification of the new moon. We don't do Kiddush HaChodesh today. So as a substitute for the Kiddush HaChodesh, as a replacement, so to speak, of the Kiddush HaChodesh, instead we say Hallel. And Hallel is instead of the Kiddush HaChodesh. Other Rishonim say that Hallel is Lefarseim Rosh Chodesh, that it helps publicize and broadcast Rosh Chodesh to the masses, that it's a special liturgy that's inserted, incorporated into the tefillah, and because otherwise the tefillah would be pretty dry, it would be pretty I guess the ritual will be the same as throughout the week and throughout the month, and therefore it adds a special dimension to Rosh Chodesh. And that's why, now you know why we say Hallel Rosh Chodesh. But Lamaisa, practically speaking, the emes, the truth is that Hallel is only a minhag to say on Rosh Chodesh, and that's why the Shulchan Aruch, when he records a minhag, and he discusses whether or not you should make a bracha. Do we make a bracha on a minhag, on a custom? We make a bracha on halacha, on a law, on a Jewish law, but do we make a bracha on a custom? So Tosfos over here brings down the Rishit of Rabbi Nutam that yes, you make a bracha on a custom. Now Tosfos does raise the point that Arava, remember the Hoshana Rabbah, the great Arava, that tremendous willow. I would have loved to see. That's like the beanstalk, Jack and the Beanstalk, right? This epic, willow branch or willow, that was just huge and went to almost like to the heavens, or took up the whole altar. So that's a custom, and some say it's from the Nevi'im, but we don't make a bracha on that. And but the Rabbeinu Tam does say that you do make a bracha on Yantav Sheni. He says Yantav Sheni is minhag avosenu b'yadeinu. It's a custom that we that withstood the test of time, so to speak, and that's minhag avosenu that we tenaciously held on to it. And therefore, minhag avosenu about the Yantav Sheni, even though it's a minhag, right? The second day of Yantiv, when we're ushering Yantiv, we make a bracha. We say make a bracha on the Neiros. We make a Shechiyanu. So you see, make a bracha on a minhag. And that's Rabbeinu Tam's approach. It's this Tosfos. However, the Mechaber brings down two opinions of his own. He brings down the opinion of Rambam, where if I'm not mistaken, I think the Rif as well, where he says that you do not make a bracha on Hallel Rosh Chodesh. You don't say bracha Tosh Mechalam Likaros Hallel because it's a custom, and we don't make a bracha on a custom. Then he says Yesh Omrim. He says there's another opinion, there's another shita. And when he brings down that shita, he says that we do, and that you do make a bracha. Now, Rav Avad Yosef, who was the most authoritative source for Sephardic halacha and minhag, the most in our generation, and who really created the renaissance of for Sephardic Jewry and put Sephardim and Beis Yosef back on the map. So he says that when the Mechaber, when the Beis Yosef mentions two opinions, and he says Yesh Omrim, then we go according to the second opinion. Now, I did make an error because really the first opinion was to say a bracha, and the second opinion was not to say a bracha. and therefore he holds that the Mechaber's true opinion would be, and the law would be, not to say a bracha like the Yeshomer, because we paskin like the Yeshomer. That's why he brings down a corollary ruling, or a divergent ruling, really, in this case. And therefore, the view would be not to say a bracha. And by the way, Turkish and Moroccan Jews, if I'm not mistaken, got a Turkish Jew right here, proud Turkish Jew. So if I'm not mistaken, Turkish and Moroccan Jews, they held like the first opinion to say a bracha, because they have many customs that they adopt and they subscribe according to Ashkenazic practice, really. But Syrian and Egyptian Jews would hold like the second opinion, and that would be not to say a bracha. Ashkenazim do say a bracha. The Gra, the Vilna Gaon, though, he held that a Yachid should not say a bracha, that a Shimotzi, you should fulfill his obligation through the recitation of the Chazan. Only the Chazan should make a bracha. And by the way, that's why somebody asked me, I have received this question several times, that how come, Rosh Chodesh, you'll notice that when the Chazan says a bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kasham tzivanu likra is Hallel, right? So nobody says Baruch Hu V'Shemo. You ever notice that? It's a little uncanny. You ever notice that? Nobody says Baruch Hu V'Shemo. The answer is maybe nobody says Baruch Hu V'Shemo. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that I saw this in the Aruch HaShulchan, that he notes that it's predicated on the fact, like the Gra, that many places that either did not make the bracha at all, or if they made the bracha, only the Chazan, the Shliach Tzibur, made the bracha, and he was motzi everybody. And we know that when a Chazan or Shliach Tzibur is motzi people, you do not say Baruch Hu Shemo, because it's to be a hefsek. The answer remains, but you don't say Baruch Hu Shemo. A similar model would be the Me'ein Sheva. Me'ein Sheva is the bracha that we say after the Shemona Esrei on Friday night. So the Chazan says, right? It's called Me'ein Sheva. The reason it's called Me'ein Sheva is because it is a semblance of the 7, because we don't use Shemona Esrei, the 18 brachos, the 19 brachos on Shabbos, because we don't entreat Hashem with bakashas, we don't beseech or entreat Hashem on Shabbos without personal request. Shabbos is a day of menucha, of rest and tranquility, and instead we say special brachos praising Hashem, 7 brachos on Shabbos instead of 18 or 19, and therefore it's called Me'ein Shabbos. It's a kain of the Chazar Shas of the recitation of the Chazan, and many people make a mistake, and when he says Baruch atah Hashem, right? And when he starts his Me'ein Shava, he starts his Chazar Shas, people answer Baruch Hu V'Shemo. You're not supposed to answer Baruch Hu V'Shemo because he's being motzi you, and therefore you only answer Amen at the end. And I see a lot of people make the mistake, and they should not make the mistake. So that basically concludes the discussion about Rosh Chodesh. Now let's go. Let's go further. Okay, it's a fascinating discussion. Yeah.
Why we don't say Hallel, complete Hallel on Rosh Chodesh?
Excellent. We only say it when it's Doraisa to say it, really, or that it's commemorating a miracle. And since it's not commemorating a miracle, it's just a minute. We don't say the full Hallel. And that's why we don't say Pesach. We don't say the full Hallel on the remaining days of Pesach. Only the first 2 days of Pesach do we say a full Hallel. And the reason for that is either because the Karbonos were consistent on Pesach and Sukkot, Masha'ekim, whereas Sukkot, it wasn't consistent. It was inconsistent because every day was a new dimension of a Karban. And the miracles were also different. So that's why in Pesach we don't... Okay, now...
Sephardic on the second day of Yontif, though, they do say Baruch is in everything.
Not Rosh Chodesh, though. I'm talking specifically Rosh Chodesh.
So is that because we just had a different ruling?
No, because Rosh Chodesh is a minhag, is a custom.
And
that's
Pesach, and
that's not a custom. That's
Sheni is not.
That's halacha, yeah.
Sheni is it's not a minhag.
Right, exactly. Now let's go further. Okay, let's stay on Daf Yudalid, and we'll conclude with this because I know it's getting late and everybody's very tired. I can see how tired you are. Shame on you! You should have the Ruach HaTorah, the spirit of the Torah in you, to be awake like a lion. Listen, I know you are. Everybody put in long, hard days. You're entitled to be tired. So let's conclude with this. Okay. Okay. Boi minei Ashion Tana Debei Rab Ami Rav Ami. Okay, so we're on the second wide line on Daf Yudalid on page 14. Daf Yudalid Aleph. So Tana Debei Rav Ami Rav Ami. Hasharui B'Tainis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Around the 7th word off the second wide line on Daf Yudalid Amud Aleph. Right around there. Hasharoi B'Tainis, somebody that is in midst of a fast. Mahu, so it's a fast day. And the question is, everybody wants to know, could I cheat on a fast day? Right? We all want to cheat. A chassan recently asked me, he was getting married, and the practice is to fast on when a person is getting married because the day of the marriage is considered to be Yom Kippur. A person gets atonement, and it's the most holy day of their lives and most solemn day of their lives. And that's one reason. The other reason is because we're afraid that the person may get shikr, the person may get drunk, and they have to do a transaction the day of the wedding. Don't tell the wife that she's being, the subject of a transaction, right? But it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. He's acquiring, for the rest of his life. He makes an acquisition that he has to take care of somebody for the rest of his life and, cherish and honor her and sustain and support her. Right? It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful, But anyhow, so therefore he can't drink. Afraid that if he allow him to eat, then he may need instead take some Xanax or Valium before the wedding, to calm down. Sometimes they get a little anxiety before the wedding, so he's going to have some schnapps, and then he won't, But anyhow, so he asked me if he's allowed to go ahead and. You have some mouthwash before the during the fast. So we'll see what the halacha about that is.
It's not swallowing the mouthwash.
Listen, the poor photographer. Can you imagine the guy's fasting? He's fasting all day and he keeps smiling and he's you have to have rachmanis on the photographer also, right? Especially if the guy may have halitosis. It's not a play. He's got to take care of himself. So the halacha is he's allowed to spit it out as long as he doesn't drink it. It's okay. He's even allowed to brush his teeth because toothbrush is not edible. If you have edible toothpaste is not edible, right? So you can brush his teeth as long as he spits it out. It's okay. Okay. So we just saved a lot of chassan from a lot of photographers and collars from a lot of problems. Okay. Anyhow, so
why the kala doesn't fast?
The kala should. So most posts can bring down that the kala should also fast. Yeah. Well, listen, if the kala, a lot of girls, they're not as strong as men. Of course, we know who the stronger gender is, right? And but the fact is that we're afraid. Listen, always have to be asked the Rav and be mashar to calculate and make the necessary decision of whether it would be detrimental. Because the person may dehydrate. The anxiety is enough. Then the anxiety accompanied with potential dehydration. It's not. I've been a chasanas where. They took sick, and it wasn't pleasant, So Chacham made a barosha. We say that a person should use their wisdom and understand, that, there may be dispensations, and maybe there are certain communities that don't fast at all. It's really based on minhag. Certain communities that don't fast, the chassan and kala don't fast at all. They just take it easy. They don't imbibe or engorge, and they don't, no steaks. What I'm saying. They eat whatever they have to eat, and that's it, So the Gemara asks a question. Hashar b'tayim, somebody that's in midst of times, ma'u sheyitam, achila ma'u sheyitam. Is he allowed to have a taste? Is he allowed to taste something? Why would he want to taste something? Let's say he's cooking food for the break fast. After the fast, he wants to know, is there enough salt here? Is there enough pepper in here? Or he wants to know. Now that would assume that he's in the process of cooking it, but he didn't cook it yet. Once it's cooked already, then what's the point in knowing if there was enough salt or pepper? So then the Mishnah Berurah brings down that even, let's say, after it's cooked, he wants to taste it to make sure that it's edible. He's not confident about his prowess in cooking, or he doesn't trust the way his wife cooks something, maybe, or something, so he wants to make sure, he wants to taste it and see if it's okay. But anyhow, so the Gemara says, Achil v'shtiyah kabel alei, did he accept upon himself only eating and drinking? In other words, the authentic eating and drinking, true eating and drinking. He's not eating or drinking; he's just tasting. Or he accepted upon himself a ban on any type of benefit, any type of pleasure, and by tasting, he's definitely deriving pleasure. And he's having pleasure; he's having benefits. Amalei, so he answered back, Tayim. He could taste, and there's no problem. Tayin Amiyachi is supporting Brisa, but Tamemes Einatuna Bracha. That there's a halacha, there's a corollary halacha. Tangential halacha in another part of Orach Chaim that speaks about whether if you taste something, right? Let's say I'm just a chef and I want to know if the product that I'm making, if the food that I'm making, if it's tasty enough. So do I have to make a bracha? If I'm preparing chicken, I want to make sure the chicken's okay. Do I have to make a shakal before? I'm not really eating it. I'm just tasting it. So he says halacha is, and it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch. It's halacha in Siman Reish Yud in Shulchan Aruch that metamemes ain't a bracha. If you're just tasting it, you don't have to make a bracha. Right? Okay, now, so the Gemara says, Vashari B'tanis Toim Ve'im so somebody who's in the midst of a fast, he's allowed to taste and it's considered to be Nothing. Ad kama. What's the extent? What's the measurement? Ravam Ravasi Tame Ashir Revia. So he's allowed to eat to baits and a half, the equivalent of an egg and a half, or Revia share of a Revia's. That's how much he's allowed to eat. Now, halachically speaking, we know that the Shulchan Aruch in Tafresh Mem Daled says that if a person wants to taste food on a fast day, so he's allowed to taste, except for Yom Kippur Tisha B'Av. A regular fast, an ordinary fast, one of those other fasts, Asar B'Tevis, Tanis Esther, Som Gedalia, Shalasar B'Tamas, let's say, a person's allowed to taste a food as long as he spits it out. And how do we know that? It's based on Toises, a famous Toises. One of the very, very famous Toises. In the bottom of Yadalit, which is for quick Toises, second to last Toises on the page, the Dibor Maska, the heading is Toim Ve'in B'Kal Klum, Pirush Rabbeinu Chananel. The Reish Ches stands for, it's an abbreviation, it's an acronym for Rabbi Chananel. Rabbi Chananel explains, Shechoiser Upailet, that he went ahead and he spit it out. The lochashav hana minatima, it's not considered to be deriving benefit from the taste of bolea, but if he swallows it low, it's not allowed. Afilu b'shar tarnis, even on the other tarnisim, not the stringent tarnisim, the more lenient tarnisim. Mishmachi apolit, therefore apolit, somebody spits out insarch bracha shenaneta, and therefore the corollary ruling in regards to hilchos brachas, Simon Reishud and Shulchan Aruch, is that you will not have to make a bracha if you're just tasting something. So based on that, Rabbi Chananel, the Ramah says that if you're just tasting something, you're spitting it out, you're allowed to do that on a fast day. And Ramah says that you should be stringent on other fast days as well, not only on Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, but other fast days as well. You should not swallow anything, and the only thing you're allowed to do is if you have to, you're allowed to taste it if you spit it out. The Mishnah Berurah says that on Tisha B'Av, Mishnah Berurah is makel, that if a person needs to wash out his mouth should be pleasant smelling, even on Tisha B'Av. Not everybody passes like the Mishnah Berurah. It's one of those lenient Mishnah Berurahs that's good to know, right? And that you want a rabbi that knows those leniencies, not the rabbi who's always saying, Asr, 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 Chamra, 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 right? The rabbi that knows. But the Mishnah Berurah is makel that even on Tisha B'Av you're allowed to wash your mouth out. And in regards to tasting, so the Rif and the Rambam hold that by making a bracha, if you just want to taste something, you have to make a bracha. So the Rif and Rambam hold that you do not have to. And interesting that the Mishnah Berurah paskins, because based on Tosfos really, but the Mishnah Berurah paskins that even if you swallowed, he's not advising to swallow, but even if you're going to swallow for just a taste, then safek brachas lahakel, and therefore you probably should not make a bracha. So it's very, very fascinating halachas that's gleaned from the Daf Yomi, from Yadal and brachas about tasting food in regards to a fasting, in regards to making a bracha. And with this, Be'ez Hashem Yisparach, we will conclude by, I adjure all of you, I encourage all of you to really to eat up the Gemara. Tamuru, taste it, it is good. Kitov, because it is so good. Torah is delicious, and my Rebbe of Kanas, that's how I used to say, Torah is absolutely delicious. So make it a business, to try to learn as much as possible. Every spare moment you have a Gemara in your hand, or have those apps that they have, and you can listen to it. But I think it's also important to see it. It's important to see the daf, to see the words, these holy words. Shkach, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening.